Gambino family. Founded in the early 1900s, this crew came out of Sicilian roots and first took shape under a guy named Ignazio the Wolf Lupo. Then came Salvatore Toto D'Aquila, who ran things through the 1910s until he got whacked in 1928. The real shift happened when Carlo Gambino took over in 1957. He didn't just lead, he rebranded the whole outfit under his name and ran the show until 1976. His underboss, Agnello Della Croce, kept things tight while Gambino built alliances and stuffed his pockets through construction rackets. Their turf stretched from all 5 boroughs to New Jersey, Long Island, and even Baltimore and Las Vegas. At their peak, they had around 200 made guys and a small army of associates. Made men were always Italian, usually Sicilian, but the associates? Open casting. They had the usual setup: a boss, an underboss, a consigliere whispering advice, capos running crews, and soldiers doing the dirty work. Associates filled in the gaps. The leadership list reads like a body count. Vincent Mangano got whacked. Albert Anastasia was gunned down in a barber chair. Paul Castellano focused on white-collar jobs, but got taken out by John Gotti in 1985. Gotti made headlines, pulled in $500 million a year, and then got buried by wiretaps in 1992. Then came Peter Gotti, Domenico Italian Dom Cefalù, and Frank Cali, who got shot in Staten Island in 2019. The De Mayo crew under Castellano racked up somewhere between 75 and 200 murders. They cornered construction with Local 282 and ran rackets like it was a business empire. The family even got clipped again in 2024 for a $22 million gambling operation involving a former cop. Cosa Nostra. This thing kicked off in mid-19th century Sicily, where citrus groves were less about juice and more about shakedowns. Gabalotti ran those farms, and the Mafia popped up to protect their interests, which usually meant threatening everybody else. What started as backdoor dispute handling turned into a fully organized crime machine by the 20th century. They called it Our Thing, and that name stuck, especially after turncoats like Tommaso Buscetta spilled it in 1984. By then, they had grown into over 100 clans, each with its own turf and boss called a capo familia. Each unit worked independently but checked in with a provincial council called the cupola. Loyalty required a body count and total silence, and if you weren't Sicilian, forget it. Their empire stretched through Palermo, Catania, Agrigento, and more, with thousands of made members. After World War II, Allied forces reinstalled friendly bosses like Calogero Vizzini, setting off a comeback. Things exploded during the sack of Palermo in the 50s and 60s when Mafia-linked guys scored 80% of the city's construction permits. Reina's Corleonesi faction sparked the Second Mafia War in the early 80s, stacking bodies all over Italy. But that bloody stretch triggered the Maxi trial in 1986. Judges Falcone and Borsellino took down over 300 mobsters, only to be murdered themselves later. Under Provenzano, the killings cooled off. Drug money became king, especially in Palermo. Meanwhile, Ndrangheta climbed the ladder with cocaine profits. The Mafia kept adapting, partnering with other families, using drones, encrypted messages, and laundering cash like pros. Even after Matteo Messina Denaro's arrest and death in 2023, the Mafia is still alive. A raid in Palermo in February 2025 proved that, nabbing over 150 suspects. They're quieter now, but far from gone. Feel free to smash that like and subscribe button for more content like this. Anyways, Bonanno family. This crew started in the late 1890s in Castellammare del Golfo, Sicily, thanks to Paolo Orlando. Then came Salvatore Maranzano, who took over and led, until he got taken out in 1931. Right after that, Joseph Bonanno slid into power and the family picked up his nickname, Joe Bananas. His run lasted nearly 4 decades, minus that awkward 2-year kidnapping thing in the 60s. Their territory? Basically a mob map. All 5 boroughs, Long Island, Westchester, New Jersey, plus outposts in Montreal, Tucson, Las Vegas, and even their hometown back in Sicily. In 1986, they had about 195 made guys and 500 associates. By 2005, that number dropped to around 135 made members. Like the others, their chain of command had a boss, underboss, consigliere, then capos, soldiers, and associates. Simple pyramid. But the leadership? Total chaos. After Bonanno, Paul Sciacca tried to clean things up, then Natalia Vola took over and promptly died. Carmine Galante came in with a cigar and a death wish. The commission finally got tired of him and sent a clear message in 1979. Then the Donnie Brasco disaster happened. An undercover agent infiltrated the crew and exposed everything, getting them booted off the commission. That wrecked their credibility. Joseph Messino came in during the 90s, rebuilt their image, restored their seat, and then flipped in 2004. First active boss to do that. Frank Cappa flipped before him. Hector Rosario, a former cop turned soldier, got caught in a gambling, turf war that dragged on through 2025. Mancuso's currently holding things down, but barely. Even with all the damage from rats and raids, they've kept low-level rackets going. Loan sharking, gambling, fraud, you name it. They're not done, just quieter. Colombo family. started back in 1928 by Joseph Profaci. This crew was one of the first to rise after the Castellamarese War. Profaci kept things stable for decades until internal drama cracked it wide open. When Joseph Colombo exposed a plot by Joseph Magliocco in 1964, the Mafia Commission gave him the top seat, and just like that, the family got a new name. They ran rackets across Brooklyn, Staten Island, Queens, and Manhattan, with reach into Jersey, Boston, Florida, Vegas, and LA. In the 90s, they had around 120 made guys and over 450 associates. By 2004, they still had over 100 made members and 500 associates keeping the machine moving. Their criminal portfolio was the full buffet: loan sharking, extortion, racketeering, smuggling, arson, assault, and every variety of fraud. But internal wars tore them apart. The first war kicked off when Joe Gallo tried to split from Profaci in the late 50s. That cooled off when Gallo went to prison. Then came the second war in the early 70s after Colombo got shot and paralyzed. The Persico faction took over, and the chaos rolled right into the Third War. Victor Orena tried to take power in 1991 while Carmine Persico was locked up. The result? Around a dozen dead and over 70 convictions. The family never really recovered. Informants like Carmine Sessa dumped secrets in 1993. Persicos tried to hold on. Carmine, then his son Alphonse, then Andrew Russo. By 2025, Theodore Skinny Teddy Persico Jr. took over as acting boss, but the hits just keep coming. Joseph Orapallo got nailed in Staten Island with ghost guns. Ralph DeLeo was caught plotting hits on witnesses. They're still active, just scattered, with more headlines than power. Chicago outfit. This crew got its start in the early 1910s under Big Jim Colosimo, who made his name with gambling and prostitution across Chicago's South Side. He had political muscle too, but that didn't stop Johnny Torrio from having him taken out in 1920 so he could ramp things up with prohibition. Torrio brought in a young Al Capone, and the two pushed the outfit into full-on gangland warfare through the roaring 20s. Capone became the face of the underworld, pulling in an estimated $100 million a year, but tax evasion got him in 1931. After that, real power shifted to Paul Ricca and Tony Accardo, who quietly built the outfit into a national force. Accardo would go on to lead for decades, keeping the books clean and the blood off his shoes. They ran as a single family, not split like the New York groups. The outfit's turf spanned Chicago, Cicero, Indiana, Wisconsin, Florida, and Vegas. Their rackets? Classic mix: gambling, loan sharking, tax fraud, extortion, and political corruption. Later, they added car theft, strip clubs, and biker gang partnerships to stay in the game. The big shakeup came in 2005 with Operation Family Secrets. That one cracked open 20 murders, convicted guys like Joseph Lombardo, and featured Frank Calabrese Jr., flipping on his own father. It even tied Tony Accardo to the killing of Sam Giancana. Today, Salvatore Sali D. De Laurentiis is considered the current boss, running things from the suburbs. Crews like Michael Sarno's Cicero crew have kept local operations alive, despite Sarno landing in prison in 2012. The outfit's still clinging to illegal gambling, loan sharking, and low-key extortion. They're not gone, they just talk less, move slower, and play tighter. Genovese family. This one traces back to the late 1890s with Giuseppe Morello's Sicilian crew in East Harlem, later shaped into a powerhouse by Charles Lucky Luciano after the Castellamarese War. Luciano ran things until 1946, then passed it to Frank Costello, who got pushed aside when Vito Genovese muscled in around 1957. That's when the family officially took his name. They carved out a deep presence across all 5 boroughs, plus Long Island, Westchester, New Jersey, and stretched into Connecticut, Massachusetts, upstate New York, Florida, and even Las Vegas. By 2004, they had around 250 made members and over 1,000 associates. The New Jersey faction alone had about 40 made guys with 400 associates backing them up. Their structure ran tight, with front bosses like Liborio Bellomo shielding the top brass. The most infamous leader was Vincent Chin Gigante, who spent decades dodging indictments by wandering around in pajamas and pretending to be mentally unfit. It worked for a while. Their bread and butter was labor racketeering, gambling, extortion, waterfront control, drug trafficking, and hijacking. They owned the West Side docks, and capos like Michael Clemente ruled the Fulton fish market from the 1940s through the late 70s. Joe Valachi flipped in 1963 and spilled everything about the family's inner workings. That was the first real peak law enforcement got into Cosa Nostra. Gigante finally got nailed in 1997, and recent years brought more convictions, including Carmelo Polito and several captains and associates tied to illegal gambling and extortion. Right now, Liborio Barney Bellomo runs the show. He's backed by a solid team: Ernest Muscarella, Danny Pagano, Pasquale Pirello. None of them flashy, all of them careful. These guys avoid phones, split up their crews, and use layers of protection. That secrecy, it's still what makes them the toughest family to crack. Lucchese family. This group started in the early 1920s, growing out of the Morello gang's ashes. Gaetano Tommy Reina ran it until his murder in 1930. Then Tommy Galliano took over during the Castellamarese War and held things down quietly. The family got its name in 1951 when longtime underboss Tommy Lucchese became boss and turned it into a serious power. Their turf covered the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Manhattan, plus Long Island, Westchester, and parts of New Jersey. They also had crews in Florida and Las Vegas. By 2004, they had somewhere between 110 and 140 made members with over 1,000 associates. Lucchese ran things into the 60s, building alliances and raking in cash from unions, trucking, and the garment district. Carmine Tramonti took over but got busted for heroin trafficking. Then came Anthony Tony Ducks Corallo, who led through the 70s and got taken down in the 1986 commission trial. Victor Amuso's been boss since then, still holding power from prison. Alongside Anthony Casso, they unleashed a wave of violence in the late 80s, including hits carried out by two corrupt New York cops. They purged rivals, flipped acting boss Alphonse Darco, and left the family in chaos. But they adapted. Panels led by Agnello Migliori, Matthew Madonna, and Joseph Di Napoli kept things going. Stephen Crea jumped in after the 2009 arrests. The rackets never stopped. Union scams, fraud, airport operations, and high-stakes gambling. The family even had a hand in the Lufthansa heist back in 1978. Lately, the feds hit them again. Anthony Villani got 21 months in 2025 for a $25 million gambling ring. That same year, Jersey captains like Georgie Zappola and Joseph Perna got indicted. They've taken hits, but the structure still stands. These guys aren't done. Not yet. Buffalo family. This outfit dates back to around 1910, with Angelo Buffalo Bill Palmieri starting things off before stepping aside in 1912. From there, Giuseppe De Carlo held the reins until his death, which opened the door for Stefano, the Undertaker Magaddino to take over in 1922. Magaddino ran the show for over 50 years and even held a seat on the commission, controlling turf across western New York, southern Ontario, Ohio, and more. At its peak, the family wasn't just local. They managed operations in both the US and Canada, especially through Hamilton and Ontario. By 2018, there were around 30 made guys, but a whole lot more associates under the radar. Their structure followed the classic Mafia hierarchy, split between the Buffalo and Canadian sides, all reporting through the usual chain: boss, underboss, consigliere, capos, and soldiers. Magaddino was a powerhouse, but after he died in 1974, the family shifted under Salvatore Frangimore and later Joseph Lead Pipe Joe Todaro Sr. He balanced pizzeria ownership with mob leadership until his retirement in 2006, handing things off to Joseph and Big Joe Todaro Jr., who's still in charge. They built their empire on prohibition bootlegging across Lake Erie, then branched into racketeering, gambling, carjacking, loan sharking, and union rackets. The Canadian branch had influence through alliances with the Papalia and Lupino crews. Even after losing control of Local 210 in the 90s, they stayed afloat. In 2017, a wiretap revealed Domenico Violi became the first Canadian underboss, marking a serious comeback. That same year, RCMP and FBI took down a major drug ring involving the Violi brothers. Most recently, a 2024 trial exposed a DEA agent tied to the Buffalo crew. So yeah, they've taken hits, but they're still breathing and still crossing borders. Patriarcha family. This crew started taking shape around 1916 in Boston and Providence, with Gaspare Messina running things after an earlier boss, Gaspare Di Cola. Filippo Bucola eventually took over and merged the Boston and Providence factions, holding power until 1954. Then came Raymond L.S. Patriarcha, who turned the family into a real powerhouse. He ran it like a business from a vending machine company on Atwells Avenue in Providence and ruled the region with a steel handshake. At their peak, they controlled gambling, loan sharking, and extortion across Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut, with some fingers in Las Vegas and Florida. Under Patriarcha, they skimmed from Vegas casinos and dominated New England gambling. He kept law enforcement off their backs by keeping a low profile and maintaining tight control, even allegedly ordering one guy to kill his own son. That's the kind of boss he was. By the 80s, things unraveled. After Patriarcha died in 1984, his son took over but couldn't command respect. Nicholas Bianco stepped in, then Frank Salem took charge until the mid-90s. After that, Luigi Baby Shacks Minocchio ran the Providence side. From 2009 to 2017, Peter Lamone led from Boston, and now Carmen, the Cheese Man. D'Annunzio's been running things, with Robert Russo stepping up as acting boss. The family's down to around 30 made guys, a big drop shot from their heyday. Most of their revenue came from racketeering, union manipulation, and gambling, but RICO charges and turncoat testimonies, especially from Joseph Barboza, gutted the family in the 70s and 80s. In 2024, the Boston FBI even disbanded their organized crime squad, saying the threat had shrunk. These days, they're more myth than muscle, but the Boston crew still shows signs of life. It's not the office it once was, but it's not entirely shut down either. Philadelphia crime family. This one goes all the way back to around 1911 when Salvatore Sabella laid the groundwork in South Philly. He built it into a functioning mafia family before passing it off to John Avina, who kept things running until the early 30s. Then came Joseph the Old Man Ida, who held steady until 1959, setting the stage for the family's most stable era. That era belonged to Angelo the Gentle Don Bruno. From 1959 to 1980, he kept things relatively quiet. No headline-grabbing bloodbaths, just gambling monopolies, labor rackets, and union control. But when he got shot in the head outside his home, all bets were off. Philip the Chicken Man. Testa stepped in but didn't last a year. A nail bomb took him out and Nicodemo Little Nicky Scarfo moved in. Scarfo turned the whole thing into a blood circus. He pushed drug deals and ordered hits constantly. By the late 80s, the feds hit back hard. Scarfo and his top guys got taken down in a massive RICO case. Then Joey Merlino came up in the 90s after knocking off Stanfa's crew in a bloody power shift. Merlino brought flash and chaos. He ran things from South Philly but faced his own pile of indictments. Joseph Legambi took over quietly after that, serving as acting boss and consigliere. He avoided conviction after a 2011 trial, but the family's grip had already loosened. Stephen Mazzone took the underboss role and kept gambling and extortion alive until his 2022 conviction. Dominic Grande, a capo, just pleaded guilty in 2024 for racketeering and drug charges. Other capos like Louis Beretta and Joseph Servideo are either under surveillance or facing charges. Right now, Merlino's still influential. Legambi's running strategy, and the feds are still watching every move. They're wounded, but not gone. Philly's still got action. Detroit Partnership. This outfit grew out of early 20th century Sicilian extortion crews. The Adamo brothers kicked things off in 1905, but a brutal gang war in 1913 split Detroit into East Side and West Side mobs. By 1931, after the Crosstown Mob Wars, a unified council formed with names like Angelo Melli, Joseph Zerilli, William Black Bill Taco, John Priziola, and Peter Licavoli, officially shaping what became the Detroit Partnership. At its peak in the 1960s, they had around 100 made guys and several hundred associates. By 2011, that dropped to 40 or 50 made men, but they stayed tight. In 1931, they even started encouraging members' families to intermarry. It worked until 2025. Only one made man had ever flipped. Taco and Zerilli led for decades. Taco served time for tax issues, but the council kept things stable. Zerilli took over with his son Anthony during the 60s and 70s, expanding into heroin, labor rackets, and Las Vegas casinos, skimming from the Frontier, Aladdin, and Edgewater. Jack Blackjack Taco modernized operations in the late 70s and dodged serious prison time with a plea deal. He kept control into the 2000s. Their rackets were solid. Bootlegging during Prohibition through Windsor, heroin via Sicilian ties, loan sharking, sports betting, union scams, trucking control, and waste management. They worked quietly alongside the Chicago outfit and New York crews. Their first major legal blow didn't come until 1996 with Operation Game Tax, which exposed gambling, loan sharking, and racketeering. Still, their loyalty-based system kept most members from flipping. These days, leadership is murky. Names like Coluccio and Atanasio float around, but it's all quiet. They're still moving money through construction, internet rackets, and low-profile schemes. Hidden? Yes, but far from gone. De Cavalcante family. This one came out of the 1920s mob scene in Elizabeth and Newark, starting under Phil Amari and then passed to Stefano Badami. After Badami was killed, Nicholas Delmore stabilized things, and by 1964, his nephew Sam, the Count de Cavalcante, made it official. Under his leadership, the crew earned full commission recognition, unifying their power and more than doubling their maid members. Territory-wise, they own northern Jersey, Elizabeth, Newark, and Hudson County, and spread down the shore, with extra reach into Staten Island, South Brooklyn, parts of Connecticut, and even South Florida. In the early 2000s, they had around 40 made guys and over 50 associates. Not a huge army, but one that stayed mostly loyal and organized. Sam the Count was slick, ran things out of a plumbing business, and supposedly tweaked the induction ritual for good. After his retirement, Giovanni John the Eagle Riggi took over and ran rackets through labor unions and construction firms, especially in porn distribution distribution, and waste hauling. Then came the panel era, Charles Big Ears, Maggiore as boss, Charles Beefs, Stango as underboss, and Giuseppe Pino Cifiliti as consigliere. The usual rackets applied: illegal gambling, loan sharking, extortion, drug trafficking, hijacking, and union scams. Their biggest hit in recent years came during Operation Charlie Horse in 2015. An undercover FBI agent infiltrated, and Stango, Maggiore, and others got scooped up in a murder and drug conspiracy sting. Stango's now officially underboss as of 2024, and Maggiore still pulls the strings. They've kept capos like Louis Consalvo, Luigi Oliveri, and Gregory Rago in circulation. Despite serious RICO charges, federal busts, and a few informants like Anthony Capo, the family's still standing. Not flashy, not gone, just running traditional rackets behind the curtain. Kansas City family. This one got its start around 1912 when Sicilian brothers Joseph and Peter DiGiovanni, known as Joe Church and Sugar House Pete, moved in with Black Hand extortion and turned it into a prohibition gold mine. They ran bootlegging routes along the Missouri River, hidden stills, and deep political ties under the wing of boss Tom Pendergast's political machine. That cover let them operate with almost no interference. Frank Chiche de Mayo was their first major boss, running bootlegging hard until his conviction in 1928. After him, John Lazia took the reins, built political connections, and controlled gambling until he got taken out in 1934. Charles Bonaggio followed, pushing political influence even further until his assassination in 1950. The big jump came with Nick Savella. From 1953 to his death in 1983, Savella turned the family into a Vegas powerhouse. He ran bookmaking and loan sharking, infiltrated unions, and helped skim millions from casinos like the Frontier and the Aladdin. The FBI nailed a lot of it through wiretaps at Villa Capri, a pizza joint that doubled as their clubhouse. By the 70s, things got ugly in the River Key district when the family tried to muscle in with strip clubs. Violence followed, and they drove out business owners like Fred Bonadonna. Nationally, they worked closely with the Chicago outfit, the Milwaukee crew, and Cleveland, especially in the Vegas skim. Carl Cork Savella and Carl Tuffy DeLuna kept the fire going into the 90s, but heavy prison sentences and aging leaders took their toll. Peter, Las Vegas Pete, Simone, a key gambling figure, held out until his death in 2025. Today, the family's barely there. Around 12 made men by 2015, with no clear boss and no central command. It's mostly old names, light activity, and scattered crews. The Savella Empire is now a ghost, still whispered about, but no longer feared. Los Angeles family. This one got started in the early 1900s, born from Sicilian Black Hand gangs under Sam Matrenga and Joseph Artizone. Artizone eventually became the first official boss during the Prohibition era. He helped consolidate power while bootlegging exploded across Southern California. Jack Dragna took over in 1931 and led the family through its strongest period. He controlled gambling, loan sharking, and union rackets while sitting on the National Mafia Commission, an unusual move for a West Coast boss. Dragna even oversaw the hit on Mickey Cohen, wiping out a major rival. But things changed fast after he died. Frank DeSimone took over in 1956. He'd been a district attorney, but his leadership was weak and the family started slipping. Nick Licata stepped in after him, but pressure from law enforcement was relentless. Dominic Brooklier followed and dragged the family into the drug trade and porn rackets. He also ordered the murder of Frank Bompensiero, a former ally turned threat. Jimmy the Weasel Frecciano acted as boss for a while, then flipped and became the first mafia boss to testify in open court. That shattered the LA crew's image and brought on a flood of indictments. Peter Milano tried to patch things together in the 80s, pushing into gambling, narcotics, and Las Vegas connections. He led until 2012, but eventually got caught up in federal cases tied to porn and drug operations. Today, Tommaso Gambino, linked to New York's Gambino family, is believed to be boss. Membership's down to maybe 15 made guys, and they have been overtaken by street gangs like the Mexican Mafia and the Crips. Still, they're the only remaining Cosa Nostra crew in California, keeping low and sticking to old school rackets like loan sharking and gambling. Not gone, just barely hanging on. Milwaukee family. This outfit formed around 1918 under Vito Guardalabien, coming straight out of Milwaukee's Third Ward Black Hand extortion scene. He passed it to his son Peter, and then Joseph Vallone took over during the Prohibition years, running bootlegging operations all over Wisconsin. By the time Frank Mr. Big Balistrieri came in during the 60s, the family had grown to over 50 made members with a few hundred associates. They had strong ties to the Chicago outfit and extended into Las Vegas, Utah, and Nevada, especially through casino skimming schemes. Balistrieri ran things for decades, even even while imprisoned, with his sons and relatives handling business. He taxed every racket in town, from vending machines to gay bars to bookies. Operation Strawman brought it all crashing down. Between 1978 and 1985, an undercover FBI agent infiltrated the family. That led to the best vending extortion case in 1980 and massive indictments in 1983 for skimming at the Stardust and Fremont casinos. Balistrieri got 13 years, then another 10 in a separate case. By the time he died in 1993, the family was unraveling. His son Peter ran it officially until 1997, then Joseph Caminiti stepped in until his death in 2014. Peter Piccioro, a real estate guy with nightlife clout, acted as boss until his death in early 2024. Today they're down to maybe 4 made guys. Most of the old rackets got swallowed by the Chicago outfit, and the Milwaukee crew now functions more like a satellite than a syndicate. They once ran Vegas skim operations and taxed the city's underworld. Now they're a footnote with a nameplate, fading quietly into history. New Orleans family. This crew has the oldest mafia lineage in the US, going back to the late 1800s. It started with the Maitringa brothers, Charles and Antonio, who ran Sicilian extortion rackets, controlled New Orleans docks, and handled prostitution, gambling, and narcotics long before Prohibition ever hit. By the 1920s, Silvestro Silver Dollar Sam Carollo was running the show. He dominated local rackets until he got deported in 1947. That's when Carlos Littleman Marcello took over and turned the family into a powerhouse. Marcello ran Louisiana gambling, skimmed from casinos, infiltrated video poker, and allegedly played political chess with national figures. His name even came up in JFK conspiracy investigations. While never proven, the rumors never really faded. The family's territory stretched from New Orleans to Mississippi and as far east as Pensacola. They operated with autonomy, rarely taking orders from the National Mafia Commission. Marcello had serious political clout and testified before the Kefauver hearings in 1951, invoking the Fifth more than 150 times. Under Marcello, the family thrived, but the 80s brought heat. Operation The Hard Crust in 1994 nailed Anthony Carollo, Frank Galliano, and others for infiltrating Louisiana's video poker industry. Marcello had already died in 1993, and none of his successors carried his weight. By the 2000s, the organization was done. Most leaders were dead or imprisoned, and the rest faded into Métairie cemeteries or federal records. Current estimates say no centralized family remains, just fragments. Old names with no structure and no real presence. Carlos Marcello built an empire with political strings and gambling money. Now that empire is a footnote. The New Orleans Mafia went from America's oldest crime family to a ghost, one with a legacy, but no pulse. Congrats on making it to the end. If you like this video, please show your support by hitting the like and subscribe button.